with my left front, and that was it. I wish he would have given me about 2 feet of room, and we would have been all right.
His team owner, Jim Hayhoe, was just here, and he talked to you. What did he say?
I don't know. He just said something about watch it on TV or something. So I'll look at it. But you know, it was a racing accident, and you know, I thought he saw me, and he didn't, and it was really unfortunate.
Thanks, Mike.
Paul?
When he went in, Vasser did seem to come way wide. This is not really a telling picture because you have Jimmy Vasser sitting to the left side. Michael certainly had a line into the corner, but it intersected with Vasser's line because of the sweep Vasser was using.
Right, and it looked like Michael's left front wheel made contact with just ahead of the right rear of Vasser's, and that's where we saw the bodywork damage as he got towed out of the gravel trap. Watch it here. Watch the point of impact. Now, Vasser does move wide. That's what led Michael to believe maybe he's letting him through. Then suddenly he turns. There's the point of impact. Vasser's right rear drives over Michael's left front, and that was all she wrote.
So on the race course itself now, as Michael Andretti is out, and we still wait for the final word on the fate of Jimmy Vasser, Emerson Fittipaldi still is putting the pressure on Nigel Mansell as we take a look from high above this course.
Mansell has been consistently the fastest Lola. His car is engineered by Peter Gibbons, who looked after Michael Andretti to such success a couple of years ago. I spoke to Peter. He said they really have done a lot of mechanical changes on the car, ongoing developments, but aerodynamically not near as much as mechanical side. Peter Gibbons, incidentally, thinks that the Lola is in fact a better racing car than the Reynard.
Watching from high above Portland International from the Blockbuster Video Blimp, part of the 1994 tour through the western half of the United States. We welcome the Blockbuster Video Blimp and its crew today to the broadcast and those great pictures they're giving us from just over the track. Interesting comparison of these two cars and how they perform differently in different sections of the course, especially when viewed from above.
Certainly under acceleration, Fittipaldi does not seem to be a threat to Mansell. In other words, he can't quite get close enough on these drag runs down the back straight. Look how far Al Unser Jr. has. 9 seconds up the road from Nigel Mansell. Is he going to hold up Emerson? Is Nigel holding up Emerson? Certainly doesn't look like it. I would have thought Emerson, if he was a lot quicker, would have made a challenging lunge at Mansell before now.
Paul Tracy waits station in the same proximate position just behind Fittipaldi. Followed by Gordon, then Villeneuve, then Herta, Guzman, Fabi, and Bosell round out the top 10 with the absence now of Vasser and Michael Andretti.
And Robbie Gordon is still hanging on there. He is at the end of this group of 4 cars here. Watch the curb again. On the inside as the watch Mansell drive up over the top. That's the only non-FIA curbing here. The infield all has FIA curb, which is just like Formula One. It's a very high curb. But that one you can drive over.
Now, though, we have slower traffic just ahead. Is this going to set an opportunity for Fittipaldi to make a move? As again they head for the festival chicane.
Oh yeah. Oh, now. What are we, 19 laps into it? Mansell now beginning to get in trouble. This is almost an identical situation to last year. And that was where he had trouble. That was where he spun. And Fittipaldi finally got by after pressuring him for so long. That's Parker Johnstone in the new team just ahead of him. Another one of the Honda cars.
His first time on the racetrack as Fittipaldi continues his pursuit of Nigel Mansell, and Al Unser Jr. is pulling away from the field at 9.8. Back in Portland as Nigel Mansell continues to try to hold off Fittipaldi. They have Hero to deal with at the moment, but Tracy is now beginning to worry Fittipaldi. That was Scott Sharp, who was just off the edge of the course at the beginning of the festival chicane.
And you know what I just saw? Nigel Mansell passed Matt Schuster under yellow. He definitely, I looked up, the yellow flags were flying, and Mansell did pass Matt Schuster.
Now that brings us to a whole new question. After the controversy that they had over waving a driver by at Detroit, the IndyCar officials have now said you can no longer wave somebody else by. If you do, you might as well wave the whole field.
Watch the yellow flag on the left-hand side. There's the pass. Yellow flag. Left-hand side, there she goes. Hey, baby. Oh, we got a black flag.
But where did the yellow zone start? Was the pass completed at it, before it, just beyond it? That's what they pay Wally Dallenbach for.
Wally Dallenbach,
the race.
He may have another headache to sort out here. Now Fittipaldi sails past Matt Schuster. Matt Schuster really needs to move aside and let this leading group ahead. Oh,
And he does.
That's the way to move aside.
That's a way to do it.
Can he hear me?
Robbie Gordon stays in contact with Tracy as well. So there are the top 5 for you, though we're not seeing much of the lead car, Al Unser Jr., and that's because he's 13 seconds ahead now of second place Nigel Mansell.
Of course, what's going on here is exactly what Al Unser Jr. wants. While they squabble and fight among themselves, Jr. has clear road, and he just stretches it and inches it further and further away, bringing him back to possibly what Jan Bika said earlier on, maybe having enough control in this race to actually do a 2-stop race instead of 3.
As we watch this ongoing battle between Fittipaldi and Mansell, Gary Gerould has this update.
A couple of observations from the Newman Haas and Penske pits that are adjacent to each other, Paul. Emerson Fittipaldi pressuring, and as you've mentioned, much reminiscent of what happened here last year, forcing Mansell into the mistake as they had to contend with rain as well as dry conditions in the course of that race. They may think, the Penske camp, that they'll be content to try to get the advantage on the pit stop at lap 33. That's 10 laps away. Meanwhile, the Mansell camp is saying, you know that when Al Unser Jr. qualifies with the race setup and now pulls away from the field, he's got everybody covered. Right now, it seems like the thinking is, who's going to be second in this race? Let's go to Jan.
Well, when we talk about how the differences are in the way they set up a Penske chassis and a Lola, the Penske chassis have great traction. So the Lolas have done this. This is a shock absorber, and if I compress this shock absorber, you can see they go onto a bump rubber. What happens is they run now the Lolas so soft to get traction that when they go down the straightaway, they rub on the ground unless they fill this up with bump rubbers. But then the car is much stiffer. Tuning these is very critical. The Lolas are running these, the Penskes are not. Does the Penske car have a different system? We don't know that for sure, but these are very important here at Portland.
Of course, Jan, that's almost like a rising rate suspension. The more you go down, the stiffer the rate suddenly shoots up when you do get onto those bump rubbers. The amazing thing about those bump rubbers is they measure them in minute increments, like a 1/16 of an inch may be just enough to change the handling of these very, very precisely set up racing cars.
But the bump rubber itself does have some spring rate to it.
No, not the bump rubber. Oh yes, the actual rubber part of it does. When you slide in the stiff ones, they don't actually have any movement.
Marco Greco moves aside as Little Al moves inside.
Oh, Al Jr. is having such a good time here. He wasn't spectacular in testing. He wasn't spectacular in Australia. Took a bit of time to learn the system, learn the ropes, learn the team and the car. But boy, he has come on so strong so quickly here that now people are virtually conceding the championship to Al Unser Jr.
Arie Luyendyk runs 20th now as he tries to catch Robbie Groff back in an Indy car, and it's good to see Robbie back. Al Unser Jr. still trying to now work his way through the back of the field, and he's doing this as we begin to close on the pit stop window. We're at 25 laps. They could stop as early as 32, possibly as late as 34. But precision on the pit stop is mandatory if you're going to win this race. You have to get in and get out and do it on exactly the right lap, because fuel can be at a premium here. We've had no full course yellows, so fuel is burning away pretty quickly.
And if you're waiting to try and beat somebody by having better pit stops, you better not think you'll beat the Penske crew, because they are so well drilled and practiced at pit stops. They do it as good, if not better, than everybody else. Look at Luyendyk. Checks his mirrors, see where Junior is, and he turns in ahead of him. Luyendyk had a terrible weekend. In fact, he said it was a disaster in the pit notes. Never really got on the pace, struggled all the time. This is a 94 Lola with a D version Ilmor engine, but this weekend, not near the pace.
Well, Al Unser Jr. for the moment is unchallenged, though this run through the slower cars in the field is definitely taking its toll on the lead. It's eroded 4 seconds off of his lead over Nigel Mansell, who now runs 9 seconds behind, and Fittipaldi continues to try and pursue Mansell. We'll be back. Budweiser G.I. Joe's 200, and there's some action going on here. Emerson Fittipaldi was able to get around Nigel Mansell on a turn going into the festival chicane, and then on the next lap, Paul Tracy, who you see just in front of Mansell, really fought with Mansell for the corner and finally won. We'll have replays on both of those for you, but what a brave move by Tracy. I mean, it looked like they were together twice, maybe 3 times during the corner.
And this was as good as you will get with 2 world-class drivers going wheel to wheel. But Tracy gets ahead. The Penske Freight Train 1, 2, 3 will now, I think, pull away from Mansell. We are 29 laps into the race, and Mansell begins to experience trouble and drop back.
Down the order, there is Tracy, there is Mansell. All of them using slower traffic to their advantage, sometimes to the disadvantage of others. Certainly Tracy doing that. So Fittipaldi moves to second, Tracy to third, Mansell drops to fourth, Robbie Gordon remains in fifth. Let's take a look at the Tracy pass. Slow motion here.
This is as good as it gets. Tracy makes the move, climbs over the curve, and watch what happens here. Mansell grabs it back, and Tracy said, there's enough road for me here. Wheel to wheel, 2 professionals. They do not have any contact, and Tracy pulls it off. As good as you will get.
Spectacular piece of driving. This is, watch to the Emerson Fittipaldi come to the inside here on the right-hand side of your screen.
This is much easier. You saw Mansell get sideways, coming onto the straight, and gave Emerson the run. He already had the corner and the line on the apex before Mansell ever turned in, and you can do nothing but concede.
It also seemed like Mansell was a little hesitant at the slower car just ahead as they entered the corner. So in second place now is the 2 car of Fittipaldi. Paul Tracy sits in third. The only change in the top of the order, with the exception of the fact that Teo Fabi is now beginning to poke his nose into the top 10. As we've been watching this battle, Teo has gotten around both Stefan Johansson and Raul Boesel and moves into 8th place.
And now Emerson has clear road ahead of him in his chase for Al Unser Jr. The last lap, he was 0.3 of a second faster than Al Unser Jr.'s last lap. So Emerson needs to put a charge on, but we are getting close to the first of the pit stops.
30 laps are now complete. Raul Boesel currently running in 9th place on board. And just ahead should be Teo Fabi. As we watch this battle, Jimmy Vasser has finally made a reappearance back at in front of the grandstand here, as walking down to the cheers of the crowd, somewhat dejected looking, along the pit straight. Delco electronic telemetry on board Raul Boesel's car as he battles with Fabi.
Almost 180 miles an hour before he got to the braking zone, chasing Teo Fabi. Raul Boesel, lots of changes in the Dick Simon team. Mo Nunn, his engineer, is now gone. Dick Simon is actually Raul Boesel's engineer for this weekend, so lots of changes for Boesel, who has been so fast all through this year. And last year, for that matter. Watch the revs on the right-hand side. Look, 13.1. So you can see his, whoa, little look down the inside of Fabi. Ford engine versus the Ilmor D.
They're all taking a pretty good chunk out of that left hand. Look at Fabi as he peels off toward the pit side, and Boesel stays on the stretch. So Fabi at lap 32 drives for the pits.
And the speed down the straight was not as fast that time as registered on the Delco Electronics, because Boesel had to back out of it just a little bit as Fabi peeled off and went down to the pit lane.
Number of cars have already taken a look at the pits. Hale Fabi one, Stefan Johansson is another. Let's go to Gary Gerould.
Well, it's going to